Welcome to the Inner Essence, a space of mindfulness, spiritual awakening, and reconnecting with your true self. Breath, be present, and begin your journey with it.
You didn't find this message. It found you. Somewhere between silence and breath, the sound of pages turning echoes through existence. Not every book rests on a shelf. Some hide inside the patterns of your days, waiting for the instant your inner frequency aligns with theirs. And now the universe has opened one before you. This is not coincidence, it is recognition. You were meant to read what has always been written within you. The hidden book isn't made of paper, it's woven from frequencies. Every thought you hold vibrates like ink across invisible pages. When your inner state matches a certain tone, the book reveals a passage meant only for you. Science calls it coherence, mystics call it awakening. Both describe the same moment when perception becomes a key, and what was once unseen begins to write itself through your awareness. She began noticing patterns that others overlooked, words appearing in dreams, fragments of phrases on passing trucks, the same symbol etched in different corners of her week. At first, it seemed like coincidence, a trick of attention. But the more she tried to ignore it, the stronger the echo became. It wasn't noise, it was rhythm. Something beneath the ordinary was calling her name without sound, arranging the world like a sentence written in invisible ink. One morning, she awoke with the strange certainty that the universe was speaking in the pauses, not the words. When she stepped outside, the air carried a stillness so precise that it felt scripted. The way sunlight bent through the mist, the shape of a leaf on her doorstep, the timing of a distant bell. Each detail formed part of a syntax she could not yet translate. She remembered the old saying, "Reality whispers, but only the quiet can hear." That was the moment the first page of the book opened. Not in her hands, but inside her perception. The call didn't arrive with thunder. It arrived with recognition. The signs had been there all along, written across the ordinary. Every coincidence was a mirror reflecting her own vibration. What changed was not the world, but her tuning to it. She began to sense that the outer landscape was rearranging itself to match an inner shift, a private language between her and the fabric of existence. In the evenings, she kept a notebook by her bed, not to document dreams, but to trace the rhythm of meaning hiding between them. When she reread her notes, she saw a pattern unfold, the same words repeated in different contexts. Listen, align, remember. It felt as if reality was spelling something out through her experiences, but the more she chased logic, the more it vanished. The book, she realized, could not be decoded by intellect. It had to be felt. Silence became her teacher. In silence, she noticed that intuition didn't speak in sentences but in frequencies, tightness or openness, warmth or resistance. Each sensation was a form of punctuation. Her heartbeat became a metronome for comprehension. The world was not sending her messages. It was resonating with her consciousness, reshaping its form to express what she was ready to perceive. Once, while waiting at a crosswalk, she felt a wave of stillness so deep it blurred the city's noise. The traffic lights flickered, people moved, yet everything seemed suspended in one shared breath. In that breath, she understood. The call was never external. It was memory returning from the core of her being. What she was hearing was herself, an ancient echo that had traveled through lifetimes to reach her awareness now. The silent call is not an event. It is a remembrance that reality and consciousness are one continuous field. You do not hear it because it is not sound. You feel it because it is you. Every coincidence, every uncanny alignment, every moment that seems too perfect is a reflection of the frequency you emit when your attention becomes sincere. The book begins to open the instant you stop searching for signs and start observing how your own vibration writes them into existence. Many try to force the first page open, demanding clarity, proof, or miracles. But the book of the universe responds only to coherence. When your thoughts, emotions, and presence move in unison, the veil between observer and creation thins. What once looked random begins to organize itself around your awareness. That is the real magic. Not the appearance of signs, but the realization that you are the reason they appear. She learned this slowly, through missteps and over-analysis. The more she pushed, the quieter the signals became. But when she surrendered expectation, The world unfolded effortlessly, like a sentence completing itself. The call, she discovered, had always been constant. It was her interference that made it faint. When she stopped trying to read and began to listen, the book read itself through her life. So it begins, not with revelation, but with stillness. The first chapter is written in silence, decoded through attention. When you realize that the universe never shouts but always resounds, you open the first page within. The call is not somewhere out there, it's the echo of your own awareness, remembering its origin. Reality answers the moment you stop asking and start remembering. Reality does not change when you ask it to. It changes when you are able to see it differently. The second chapter of the hidden book begins the moment observation turns into authorship, when perception itself becomes the pen. She discovered this one afternoon while staring at the surface of a lake. The reflection shifted with the smallest ripple, yet the sky above never moved. It wasn't the world that wavered. It was the lens through which it was seen. That realization was her first lesson in invisible reading. At first, she believed she was uncovering secrets that had always been there, like decoding a fixed script. But slowly, she understood that each insight appeared only when she was ready for it. The book was not revealing pre-written pages. It was composing itself in real time through her awareness. Every act of observation, every question asked with sincerity, rearranged the text. The same event, viewed through a different emotion, carried a different meaning. In this way, the book and the reader evolved together, each reflecting the other's state of being. Science might call it the observer effect, the idea that the act of observation alters the observed phenomenon. But beyond laboratories and equations, the principle lives in daily life. The way you look at a situation determines what it becomes. When she saw obstacles, she found resistance. When she saw lessons, she found openings. The universe seemed to mirror her expectations, not because it obeyed her will, but because her perception filtered its infinite potential into form. This was the essence of the invisible reading. The book doesn't show you what you want to see. It reveals what you are ready to comprehend. The words appear only when the reader's vibration matches their meaning. Each insight is a meeting point between inner frequency and outer possibility. To force understanding is to press your face against a mirror, mistaking your own breath for fog. Clarity comes only when you step back, breathe, and allow reflection to settle into focus. She began to practice this in simple ways. When frustration arose, instead of reacting, she observed the sensation without judgment. The feeling softened, revealing information hidden beneath it, a memory, an unmet need, an assumption. Each emotion became a sentence in the book, written not to torment her but to teach her how she was shaping the story. The more she read with acceptance, the clearer the script became. Life was speaking in experiences rather than words, and she was finally learning the language. One evening, a friend betrayed her trust. The pain was sharp and the old pattern returned: anger, disappointment, withdrawal. But as she sat in silence, something shifted. She asked not, "Why did this happen?" but "What part of me is being shown through this?" The question didn't excuse the hurt. It expanded her awareness around it. In that instant, the scene transformed from tragedy to text. The betrayal was not random. It was a paragraph about boundaries, self-worth, and the courage to remain open without collapsing. The book had written a difficult passage, but she was finally fluent enough to read it. Through this practice, she realized that reality was not a static script to be deciphered, but a living manuscript rewritten with every observation. The world outside was a projection screen. The true edits happened within the observer. Each time she brought awareness to a habit, a judgment, or a fear, the corresponding scene in her external life began to shift. The same people, the same places, but the tone changed, the dialogue softened, the outcome realigned. It was as though reality responded to attention the way light responds to a prism, refracting differently based on the angle of perception. In time, the line between inner and outer dissolved. Reading the world became reading herself. Every coincidence, every synchronicity, every sudden clarity was a sign of alignment between consciousness and creation. The book had no cover, no conclusion. It was a field that rewrote itself as she evolved. To read it required surrender, To misunderstand it required resistance, and the more she surrendered, the more coherent her world became. That is the lesson of the invisible reading. The universe does not hide meaning, it waits for coherence. You see not with your eyes, but with your readiness. The sentences of reality are written in waves, collapsing into form only when met by the stillness of observation. The book is alive, and you are both its reader and its ink. To see is to write, to observe is to shape, and to awaken is to realize that every moment, every glance, every breath is a new line being composed by the consciousness that dares to witness itself. Before every revelation, there is an erasure. The third chapter of the hidden book begins not with discovery, but with forgetting. She didn't plan for it. It arrived like an eclipse, sudden and complete. One morning she woke, and the world that once felt luminous now seemed drained of meaning. The symbols no longer spoke. The coincidences fell silent. The pages she thought she had read dissolved into blankness. It was as though the book itself had closed, leaving her alone with the echo of its absence. At first, she fought against the void. She tried to revive the feeling of connection, meditating, rereading old notes, forcing gratitude, but every attempt deepened the silence. The more she struggled to reclaim the light, the heavier the shadows became. It was only later that she realized this darkness wasn't punishment. It was the space where old stories were being erased. The universe, in its quiet precision, was clearing the margins of her consciousness so that new sentences could be written. There is a peculiar tenderness in being stripped of certainty. When the familiar dissolves, what remains is raw awareness, unprotected, unembellished. She began to see that the pain of loss was not a failure of alignment, but an act of purification. Each belief, each attachment, each identity she had built around her previous understanding was being burned away by the same light that once illuminated her. The book was still open. It had simply turned to a chapter written in invisible ink, readable only through surrender. Days turned into weeks. Her inner landscape felt barren, but within that barrenness, something subtle was stirring. She noticed that the more she accepted not knowing, the gentler her perception became. Without the weight of expectation, even small moments carried quiet depth, the rhythm of rain, the hum of distant traffic, the warmth of her own breath. Meaning was no longer spectacular. It was intimate, almost shy. The book was teaching her that to remember truth, she first had to forget what she thought it was. This forgetting is not loss. It is renewal. When the mind empties, awareness reclaims its original space. The stories we cling to, who we are, what we deserve, how the world works, become walls that separate us from direct perception. The universe cannot write new wisdom on a surface already covered in conclusions, so it erases. It takes away what we outgrow, even when we still love it. It removes the scaffolding of certainty, so that consciousness can rebuild itself from a deeper foundation. One night, as she lay awake, a phrase surfaced without origin. The void is the ink of creation. The words felt ancient, as if whispered from somewhere beneath her ribs. She realized that every absence carried potential. Every silence contained the hum of new language waiting to be spoken. Forgetting was not the end of the book, it was the turning of a page. To resist it was to smudge the fresh print before it could dry. In this stage, life may appear chaotic. Relationships shift, desires fade, goals lose shape. But beneath that disorder, coherence is forming. The old frequencies, built on fear or control, cannot coexist with higher awareness. The forgetting cleans the instrument so that it can resonate again. She learned to stop asking for the old harmony to return and began listening for the new tone emerging beneath the noise. Slowly, fragments of understanding resurfaced, softer and truer. She noticed that her mind no longer grasped for meaning. It received it. The book didn't demand interpretation, it invited presence. The loss of identity had revealed a broader self, one not confined by narratives. What she once called me was now a movement within a larger intelligence, a single vibration among countless others composing the song of existence. The pages of forgetting are not cruel, they are merciful. They ask you to let go of borrowed truths so that your own voice can be heard again. The darkness is not a void of meaning, but a womb of recreation. It is here that the soul edits itself, rewriting from essence rather than memory. And when she finally stopped fearing the blankness, the book shimmered once more, not as words but as silence alive with promise. She understood that forgetting is how the universe breathes between chapters, how consciousness resets its rhythm before writing again. The erased lines were not lost. They had become the paper itself. Every seeker must walk through this emptiness, for no one can hold the light without first learning to honor the dark that makes it visible. The universe does not punish when it takes away, it prepares, and when the next page appears clean and waiting, the ink will be your own awareness, steady, renewed, and ready to write what only you can remember. There comes a moment in every seeker's path when the mirror turns. Up until now, she believed herself to be a reader of hidden pages, a witness of divine authorship unfolding through signs and synchronicities. But in the stillness that followed forgetting, a question began to whisper from the edges of her awareness. Who is truly writing all this? The question didn't arrive as philosophy, it arrived as recognition. One afternoon, while walking through a quiet street, she noticed a phrase painted on a wall. The author is inside the story. It stopped her mid-step. For a moment she felt the world inhale around her, as though the air itself were waiting for her to understand. Every memory, every coincidence, every so-called message from the universe began to collapse inward, until only one realization remained. The observer and the observed were not two. The one reading the book and the one writing it were the same field of consciousness, folding back on itself in infinite conversation. It was dizzying at first. The idea that she might be both creator and character felt like sacrilege. Yet when she examined it, it explained everything. How could the book respond so precisely to her emotions unless those emotions were its ink? How could each scene of her life rearrange itself to match her perception unless perception itself were the quill? The universe was not handing her a script, it was improvising with her attention. Science hinted at this long ago. Physicists observed that particles behave differently when measured, suggesting that observation shapes outcome. But beyond equations, this principle lived in experience. Every thought altered her biochemistry. Every emotion changed her perception of time. The laboratory of consciousness confirmed it daily. Awareness is participation. The reader's gaze is creative. She began to test this without fanfare. When she approached a difficult conversation from fear, the exchange tangled into confusion. When she entered it from presence, it unfolded with grace. The difference wasn't in the words spoken, but in the frequency of the observer behind them. The same scene, the same people, yet two entirely different realities. The book had not changed, its author had. The revelation brought both liberation and weight. If she was the author, then every page of joy and sorrow carried her signature. There was no more space for blame, no more comfort in randomness. But with that responsibility came power, the power to rewrite. She realized that forgiveness, gratitude, and attention were not moral gestures, but editorial tools. Each act of understanding revised the past, softened its edges, reauthored its meaning. One night, while journaling, she wrote a sentence that seemed to appear from beyond her conscious mind. To know you are the author is to realize the story has never been against you. She read it again and again until it sank deep into her chest. Every hardship, every detour, every silence was a paragraph she had written to remember her own voice. The universe was not a separate intelligent scripting lessons for her. It was her in expanded form, orchestrating encounters for the sake of awakening. She began to walk differently after that. Each morning felt like an unwritten page. The ordinary became sacred. Boiling water, opening curtains, stepping into the street. She could sense the text unfolding beneath every movement, the invisible hand of consciousness composing reality through her gaze. The book no longer felt hidden. It breathed through her. This understanding did not make her immune to pain, but it changed its texture. Suffering lost its accusation and became information. She no longer asked, "Why is this happening to me?" but "What am I expressing through this?" The tone of existence shifted from complaint to curiosity. Even chaos began to sound like music written in a key she was just beginning to learn. And now, the same question turns to you. If reality mirrors the author behind the eyes, what line are you writing at this exact moment? When you look at your world, its beauty, its difficulty, what story is your awareness composing through its gaze? If you have ever felt the faint recognition that you are not merely a character but also the pen, let that truth settle in. Take a breath, feel its rhythm, and understand that this inhale is your signature on the page of existence. If these words resonate, let your presence leave a mark. Like this message to affirm that you remember who writes your story. And in the comments, write a single phrase to anchor it in the field. I am both the reader and the writer. Let that declaration become the sentence through which the next page begins to write itself. When she finally accepted that she was both reader and author, the landscape of her reality began to shift in ways that could no longer be dismissed as coincidence. What once felt fixed now revealed its fluidity. The same situations that had seemed immovable responded to her slightest change of perception, as if the world itself were made of memory clay, softening under the warmth of awareness. This was the beginning of what she came to understand as the quantum rewriting, the moment when consciousness stops reading passively and begins to edit creation itself. At first, she mistook it for imagination. She would think of someone she hadn't seen in years, and they would appear the next day. The long-standing tension at work dissolved after she decided silently to see harmony instead of conflict. The more she observed these patterns, the clearer it became that the universe wasn't reacting to her thoughts like a servant. It was resonating with her coherence. The book and the author were now writing in sync. Every clear intention set in emotional alignment appeared to reorganize the fabric of her experience. The rewriting began within, not in outer events. She noticed that when she changed her emotional frequency, shifting from anxiety to trust, from control to openness, the world around her rearranged itself in subtle but undeniable ways. It wasn't magic, it was mechanics. Emotion was the magnetic field that structured probability. The more coherent the feeling, the more coherent the reality it summoned. The book, it seemed, wrote itself according to the resonance of the reader's heart. She started observing her own thoughts as if they were lines of code projected into the field of the unseen. Every complaint was an instruction, every gratitude another command. When her mind spiraled into fear, her days followed that syntax, disjointed, rushed, defensive. But when she held a steady presence, life slowed, and synchronicity began to reappear like punctuation marks in a story being rewritten in real time. She realized that attention was not a lens but a lever. What she held steady in focus acquired mass in her reality. One evening she sat by the window, watching the lights of the city flicker in the distance. Each window illuminated, dimmed, illuminated again like cells in a living organism breathing with her. She imagined the whole world as a lattice of probabilities, each responding to the smallest vibration of awareness. When you open the book, she whispered to herself, the book reads you back. That phrase stayed with her, pulsing like a heartbeat through her thoughts. She began experimenting not by forcing outcomes, but by tuning frequencies. Instead of asking for specific results, she aligned her state with the essence she wished to experience: peace, clarity, abundance. The outer world mirrored her consistency, not her desire. Events didn't always follow logic, yet they unfolded with precision. Problems dissolved without direct intervention, and opportunities appeared through unexpected channels. The rewriting wasn't about control, it was about coherence. The clearer her inner field, the more elegant the narrative of her life became. She understood then why chaos precedes transformation. Before a new pattern can stabilize, the old one must lose coherence. The confusion, the unpredictability, even the setbacks were not errors in the script, but necessary edits. The quantum page had to be wiped clean before new sentences could take shape. Every unraveling was an act of precision, the universe deleting what could no longer resonate with the next chapter. The most astonishing discovery came when she realized that rewriting reality did not require effort, only presence. The more she tried to manipulate outcomes, the more tangled the story became. But when she observed with openness and quiet conviction, the lines rearranged themselves. Reality seemed to prefer cooperation over command. She was not bending the world to her will, she was entering into dialogue with it. At the deepest level, the rewriting was not about changing events, but transforming the meaning that animated them. A memory once seen as failure could be rewritten as initiation. A heartbreak could become a doorway. A silence that once felt like absence could reveal itself as protection. By changing the emotional lens, the book itself changed language. The same paragraph now carried light, where it once carried pain. In this way, she learned that manifestation is not a trick of thought, but a consequence of harmony. The universe does not obey demands, it echoes vibration. Each coherent emotion becomes a phrase the field can read. To write consciously is to align intention, emotion, and attention into one unified frequency. The rewriting happens not in the stars, but in the spaces between heartbeat and breath, where consciousness meets creation without resistance. By the time she understood this, her life had stopped feeling like a story unfolding to her and began to feel like a melody she was learning to play. The Book of the Chosen was no longer hidden, it was humming through her every action. And though she still faced uncertainty, she met it differently, like a writer watching her own words appear, trusting that each line, even the incomplete ones, were leading toward coherence. The return always happens quietly. There is no thunder, no celestial applause, only the soft weight of understanding settling into the ordinary. After the rewriting, she began to notice that the extraordinary no longer required spectacle. The world had not changed shape, yet everything within it seemed illuminated from another angle. The same streets, the same people, the same routines, but now they carried the unmistakable shimmer of authorship. Reality had become transparent. She could see consciousness moving through it like light through water. Coming home after transformation is unlike the return from any other journey. It is not a circle closing, but a spiral completing one of its turns. What once felt separate, the sacred and the mundane, the self and the universe, now intertwined seamlessly. She no longer looked for signs, because every breath had become one. The book she once sought as an object had revealed itself as the act of living consciously. Every gesture, every decision, every silence was a page being written in real time. At first, this awareness brought a strange loneliness. When the veil lifts, and you see that every story is self-written, there is no longer anyone to blame or to save. Yet that solitude soon unfolded into intimacy, the profound recognition that every being is a line in the same manuscript. The stranger on the street, the old friend, the child laughing in the distance, all were expressions of the same author exploring different voices. She no longer felt apart from them. She was them, written in another tone. There was freedom in this, but also responsibility. To know oneself as the writer of reality is to carry the weight of coherence. Each thought, each emotion, each response ripples outward, shaping the field of countless others. The awakened are not chosen by privilege but by awareness, and awareness demands stewardship. She understood that enlightenment was not escape, it was participation. The light one carries must enter the world, not hover above it. She returned to her daily life with this understanding as compass. Work, conversation, solitude, all became laboratories for observation. When irritation surfaced, she didn't suppress it. She observed its texture, its frequency. The moment she saw it clearly, the charge dissolved, leaving behind a quiet clarity. That was the new rhythm, seeing without clinging, responding without reacting. Each time she maintained coherence, the world around her followed suit. Meetings flowed, accidents averted themselves, and unexpected kindness appeared in ordinary places. The book was reading through her again, now in fluent dialogue. The more she lived this way, the more porous reality became. Boundaries softened. The line between inner and outer, thought and event, cause and meaning blurred into a single motion of awareness expressing itself. She could no longer say whether she was dreaming the world or being dreamed by it. Both were true. Life unfolded like an improvisation with perfect timing, guided not by prediction but by resonance. The deeper she trusted that rhythm, the more gracefully it led her. There was one evening she remembered above all. She sat beneath a dim sky as dusk melted into night. The air was cool, carrying the scent of rain. For a long time she said nothing, simply listening. Then, without trying, she whispered a truth she hadn't known she knew. The reader seeks understanding. The chosen one remembers. The words vibrated through her like a chord struck on a vast instrument. In that vibration, she felt the unity of all things, the visible and the unseen, the written and the unwritten. The book had not ended. It was still being composed through her breath. From that night forward, she stopped seeking revelations. Instead, she practiced presence. She watched her thoughts as if reading them from the margins, tenderly editing when needed, letting silence write when words failed. The more she trusted this collaboration with existence, the more effortless creation became. Opportunities appeared as naturally as breath, relationships healed without negotiation, and time itself seemed to bend around her awareness. She realized that being chosen was never about destiny. It was about availability. The universe can only write through an instrument tuned to coherence. And so she lived as both writer and witness, letting her days unfold as verses of a single cosmic poem. To others she seemed calm, perhaps ordinary, but within her the entire architecture of reality was alive and fluid. The true return of the chosen is not a triumphant arrival. It is the quiet recognition that the divine has been home all along, patiently waiting for the reader to remember their authorship. Now, when she looks at the world, she no longer asks what the next page will reveal. She simply breathes, aware that each inhale is the beginning of a sentence, each exhale its completion. The book continues, unbound, unwritten, infinite, carried in the hands of all who have learned to see. And in that seeing, the universe writes itself anew, forever remembering through those who choose to awaken within the story. The book of the universe never closes. It lives through you. Every thought, gesture, and act of kindness writes a new line in creation's unfolding story. Reality is not fixed, it listens. What you observe becomes what is written next. The chosen are not rare. They are those who remember to read with presence and write with love. The page is open. What will you choose to inscribe today? If this message resonated with you, don't let it fade. Anchor it. Like this video to seal your presence in this chapter of the book. Subscribe if you wish to keep reading with us as new pages unfold. And in the comments, write the phrase, "The book is open within me," so I know you reached the final line and are ready for what the universe will write through you next.